The Italian Wine Podcast is the community-driven platform for Italian wine geeks around the world. Support the show by donating at ItalianWinePodcast.com. Donate €5 or more and we'll send you a copy of our latest book, My Italian Grape Geek Journal, absolutely free. To get your free copy of My Italian Grape Geek Journal, click Support Us at ItalianWinePodcast.com or wherever you get your pods. Grazie mille.
Welcome to this special Italian Wine Podcast broadcast. This episode is a recording off Clubhouse, the popular drop-in audio chat. This Clubhouse session was taken from the Wine Business Club and Italian Wine Club. Listen in as wine lovers and experts alike engage in some great conversation on a range of topics in wine. If you enjoy listening, please consider donating through ItalianWinePodcast.com. Any amount helps cover equipment, production, and publication costs. And remember to subscribe and rate our show wherever you tune in.
Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Clubhouse Ambassadors Corner. So today we have Barbara Fitzgerald, and she will be interviewing Sergio Germano. Hi, Barbara. How are you?
Hi, Laika. I'm wonderful. How about you?
I'm wonderful too. And so before I dive in to the questions, I wanted to introduce you first to our audience as as a refresher, because, we kind of miss you. So we want to introduce you again. So we're going to talk about you first. Okay. So Barbara here, she has a career of nearly 2 decades in the wine industry. So she specializes in D2C marketing and business development. She actually talked about this on our podcast interview first with Victoria Cheche on The Next Generation. And then that's where it started. And then we started talking about it. She started talking about it more on Wine to Wine. So our Wine to Wine sessions, the recorded sessions are already out. So we're just trying to publish it every week. So your session is going to be on Italian Wine Podcasts. So at some point. So I will let you know. Anyways, Barbara, she led roles from entry level to senior management, combining her extensive experience with data analysis, critical thinking, and storytelling while driving revenue growth and brand recognition for California wineries. She's part of the 4th generation of an Italian-American family among the California wine industry pioneers, and she has spent her life around wine growing, production, marketing, distribution, and hospitality. Wow. Okay. That's a lot. And you are very, very talented, I suppose.
Too kind. Don't make me blush.
Okay. I will not. So I will just dive in straight to the questions. So why did you select Sergio Germano as your favorite producer for tonight?
Well, I have always really appreciated how Sergio and the Sergio Germano wines really strike the balance between honoring the heritage of the area. They're from Barolo, but also bringing innovation to it. And so Sergio's really incredibly curious and experimental in both wine growing and wine making. And also people probably know him most well for making wines from Barolo, but he also makes fantastic Alta Longa sparkling wines. And I'm here for the sparkling wine. So.
Wow. Okay. That's a different angle, I think. So for now, we only have a few audience, but I wanted to actually say hi to Nicoletta Pala. She was our producer. She has been interviewed 2 weeks ago by Russ Lorber. So I'm so happy to see you here. Also, Edward, Elena, Julia, and Luis. Our second question for you, Barbara, is what are the learning objectives that we should be expecting from this interview?
Well, I hope everyone learns about Sergio's specific approach to making Nebbiolo, because as I said, he's very experimental and very curious. Both in the vineyard and in the cellar. I also hope they learn about his specific approaches to making wine in metodo classico, the classic method for sparkling wine, and also learn about some of the other grapes he's been experimenting with in the Piemonte area.
Okay, so my last question is, how did you discover the wines of Ettore Germano?
I first discovered them at Tre Bicchieri in San Francisco. I think it was in 2015. And his wine just happened to have very good representation in the 2 places I spend the most time, which are California and Italy. So I come into contact with them very often. And in fact, I was just in Italy for 2 weeks on a work trip, and I was at a restaurant in Firenze, and a couple next to me ordered a bottle of Ettore Germano, and then the same thing happened to me again in Milano. So definitely people are out there loving his wine and drinking his wine.
Yeah, that's a funny coincidence. Probably you're meant to do the Clubhouse now because you've tried wines. Okay, so I am going to turn over the floor to you. Okay.
Okay. Well, Sergio, are you there?
Hi, I'm here.
Hi. Well, thank you so very much for making the time to be here.
It's a pleasure. It's almost evening here, and
yes,
at the end of the day.
If I have the timing right, you probably have the most epic sunset happening in your beautiful hills there in Serralunga. So I'm going to give a little background about you, your biography, and then I'll start asking you some questions.
Pleasure.
Sergio was born in 1965, and as a child, he helped his parents in the vineyards after school. So he's always been in the Barolo area. After finishing his enology studies in Alba, he worked for 3 very important wineries in that area, all the while continuing to help out his father and contributing to the conversion of the family farm to a full-fledged winery. So in 1988, the first 5,000 bottles of Barolo, Dolcetto, and Barbera were placed on the market together with a small production of Chardonnay. But the turning point really came a few years later in 1993 when all the family's grapes were vinified and bottled for themselves. So in 1995, Sergio bought about 2 hectares of Ceretta vineyard and started the challenge of producing wines in Altalanga, planting the first vineyards of Chardonnay and Riesling in Chile. In 1997, he married Elena Bonelli, who was giving great support to the family winery and helping Sergio with business administration as well as hospitality. And then the family grew even more with the joy of the birth of their 2 children, Elia in 1998 and Maria in 2001. And then continuing on, after a few years, Sergio purchased another hectare of vineyards in Prapo, Lazzarito and Pradone, which is a particular parcel of Lazzarito, and also another parcel in Ceretta. So these, for anyone who doesn't know, are all crus of Barolo. In 2010, Sergio's mother inherited from her cousin, Tommaso Canale, half of a hectare in the most historic and famous vineyard of Serralunga, which is Vigna Rionda. Sergio's goal is to express the territory and the character of the various vines, trying to express elegance and finesse in the wines, which, as a Piedmontese tradition, are generally combined with gastronomy. So what a great background. We're so lucky to have you here to learn all about this. Sergio, can you tell us a little bit about, in your own words, maybe, about the history of Ettore Germano and how you came to be in charge?
Yeah, of course, Ettore Germano, my father, was the first full-time wine grower, because before, my grandfather and great-grandfather, they run a mixed farm, traditional in our area, but my father felt the potential of the viticulture, and he planted all the estate with vineyard. Was the classic grape variety from our region, Dolcetto grape, Barbera grape, and Nebbiolo grape. But he sold the grape. He wasn't a winemaker because he doesn't have time enough. He was so passionate about vineyard. He was very skilled grafter. He select all the kind of grape to graft himself in our vineyard. We still continue with this selection, and we are proud to have this in our red grape varieties. And in 1985, when I finished the enologist school, I definitely have a dream to do some bottle of wine, and we start in 88 with some, as you're reading my biography.
And now, so that was in 1988. How many bottles are you making now?
Speaking in American slang, is almost 12,000 cases, 13,000 cases.
That's fantastic.
Now we run 22 hectares. There's almost 55 acres of vineyard. In the 2 farms in Serralunga, almost 25 acre, and in Altalanga in Chile, almost 30 acres.
Fantastic. So let's get really into it now. So how do you manage your vineyards to ensure the quality of your grapes, and what sustainable practices do you use in your vineyard?
Fortunately, as I told my father, it was a very skilled and very passionate and respectable wine grower. He don't need to use any stranger, but just work with tradition. And what I like is from my grandfather, my father, I can learn the really interesting or all our historical practice to work, to respect all the character of every corner, every slope, every exposure different, and this is important to know that to manage differently, because a little bit more early by break or maturation, or later more sunny, more windy, and this is a very, very important, because it's possible to manage to safe to keep some more treatments. Our goal is the respect for the area, respect for ourselves because we live in the area, of course, respect of the customer who drink our wine or to come to enjoy the area where we work, where we live. Sustainable, of course, is a respect. We follow. I don't like to categorize my image in this, but we follow almost the organic protocol, but with some more deep character to do it year by year, to manage with flexibility what we do to have a best result in the quality and to respect the vineyard.
I really love that. That sets sustainability as a circle of respect. That's a very nice way to put it. Climate change is presenting a particular water challenge in the Langhe. So how, if at all, have you adjusted your farming in response to this?
Again, it's important to know everything, to don't work too much, to don't turn too much the soil. It's important to do the herb between the row, to cut regularly, to have the control of the herb. We seed the herb as a green manure because you have a double goal to fix the nitrogen in the soil, but also to keep the soil open. But after we cut the grass, and they do like a cover like a towel on the soil, just to protect the evaporation of the soil and to help the life of the soil. And it's important also we have the herb. If we have a rain, we can catch all the drops from the rain as possible. Even we are in the very particular area because the slope is deep, the soil is very clay, limestone. The risk of erosion is very, very important. We have to protect also the vineyard from the erosion to keep the morphology of the soil, and after to catch the water and to put in the soil more as is possible to make the reserve of water.
And green manure, I learned from you when I met with you last week, that is what we would call seed spreading, right?
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. The terroir, you were already kind of speaking this, but the terroir of Barolo can change significantly from row to row, not just from one vineyard to the next. You happen to make wine from some of the top crus of Barolo, and can you explain some of the specific characteristics of these sites and how they might affect your wines?
Oh yeah, it is the most important, the most fascinating character, because we have what people say terroir is the interaction between the soil, the environment, and the man who manage this. But Nebbiolo is a detector, is one of the most sensitive grape variety to catch the character of the soil, especially. And the soil of a Barolo area is made 5 to 10 million years ago as a sedimentation of the water from the sea. This is very intriguing because it depends from the current of the water. We can have some more fine texture like Serralunga, where we live, where we work, or maybe a little bit more sandy or a little stony if it was a little bit more movement of the water and more young, 5-6 million years. For this reason, in the sedimentation, we have some different sometime because after that, we had like an earthquake to move a little bit after the sedimentation, almost 10 million years ago. And this make the difference from the slope, from the altitude, from the top of the hill, a little bit medium. And this is what is very intriguing to work in this area, to select, to share, to devise, to make the wine separated from many plots, and we have a different expression of the wine. And this is one of the mostly intriguing and fascinating character. And this is the sense where we have sometimes vineyard close by, nearby, and they have a relatively different expression in the nose and the texture of the tannin. And this, I think, for the wine lover, is one of the most important characters to taste from the same producer, different expression, or from the same hill with some different producer, a little bit character different is a very, very fascinating.
Yeah, it means there's so much to explore. I mean, there's so much to explore in wine, period, that even within this one region, it's so varied. How would you say wine growing really differs in Barolo from Altalanga in terms of soil type and pruning and green harvesting and canopy management?
We have to say the soil, like in Barolo area, as we told, is mainly limestone. Clay reaching calcium carbonate, sometimes a little bit sandstone, very few stones, very high pH, high concentration in calcaire that give power, texture. Alta Langa is also higher elevation. Lower Langa, Barolo area is till 1,300 feet, more or less, is the limit of the altitude where we grow Nebbiolo, where is Barolo, Barbaresco area. Where we go in Alta Langa, we are maybe 20, 30 kilometers of the south, more close to the mountain between then separate Piedmont and Liguria. And the mountain was made a bit more earthquake, more movement, and also the sedimentation was more chaotic, and we have more stone. We have a lot of sandstone and stone in Alta Langa, and the altitude is between 15 to 1,500 to 2,000 feet in elevation. And this changed totally the microclimate, the climate, the temperature. And beside this, also the composition more light in terms of texture. It changed the character. But we do two different kind of growing. In Barolo, we grow Nebbiolo grape mainly. In Alta Langa, I grow white varieties as Pinot Noir and Chardonnay for sparkling Alta Langa, Riesling and Chardonnay for still wine, or Nascetta, the indigenous variety originally from Barolo area. And these are wine where I look for more finesse, more crisp, and saltness and minerality and freshness, like lower sugar. In Barolo, we need more power and more concentration. This is the main difference between those two. But we do the same management in the growing.
Interesting. And just for a point of reference, how far is Barolo from Alta Langa?
Beginning of Alta Langa is just 5 or 6 miles, but after is till 30, 40 miles. Alta Langa is a big area.
Where where is that in relation to Barolo?
It is almost 30, 35 miles south of Barolo.
So let's talk a little bit about now some of your wine making. So during the harvest of Nebbiolo, do you prefer to keep the fruit whole or crush the berries for more extraction? And do you employ any whole clusters at all?
I need to say, very important for me, I like always to crush the berries because I think it's important the juice become wine in contact with the skin and to extract the tannin and the color, because I think it's important with just the grape not crushed. I think the fermentation is for some reason more difficult to manage, and also sometimes doesn't express entirely the character of the grape variety. Sometimes we don't destem the grape, but we always crush, because for me it's important during the maturation too. Of course, we are from Serralunga. Serralunga is typically an terroir where people expect power, tanning, and texture. And for this reason, I like to respect this personality of the wine from Serralunga.
And that's, I think, one of the things that makes you so interesting, because you so well combine the heritage with all of the newer things that you're testing out. And sticking with making Nebbiolo, do you prefer the fast, warmer fermentation that's more classic Barolo, or do you prefer a cooler, slower one? And do you use open or closed-top fermenter?
We do the fermentation not too fast because we do fermentation and maceration altogether is very long. We do minimum 35, 40 days. And for some selection or the single vineyard or reserve, we do through 50 or 60 days. And for this reason, we don't need a fast fermentation and high temperature. I prefer to do medium temperature. Long contact is interesting to extract step by step the complexity of the wine.
Yeah. And do you do open or closed top?
We do open till the fermentation. And after, when we start the maturation, because the fermentation is gone and the carbonic gas is slowed down, we close the tank.
And that's amazing. So sometimes up to 60 days on your single vineyards. Yeah, that's incredible. Yeah. So with some of the changes in fruit chemistry, especially in recent years, how has that affected your decision to use indigenous versus selected yeast strains? And what do you think about malolactic strains?
I never liked the spontaneous fermentation because spontaneous fermentation is the same like when we need an helper, an employer. We don't do any test to check him, but this we bring the first one we met in our road. And we never know if this guy has a high performance or he doesn't like to work. For me, it's much more important to express the varietal character in the terroir, to ferment with selected yeast, but neutral. I like when the yeast transform the sugar in alcohol, but I think it's important they respect. It's almost the same like the yeast to ferment the sparkling in bottle. They don't have to give the aromas of fermentation. They have to just change the sugar in alcohol. And in this case, we have a more neutral character from the yeast, and we can appreciate the character of the terroir, the more hearty, more fruity, more spicy, or the regular fermentation, especially now with a hot temperature. The spontaneous yeast is always more an hazard to trust the spontaneous fermentation. I prefer to control this.
And that's probably why your wines year after year are so expressive of where they came from and the grape. So why do you choose, people don't know, you choose not to use barrique for Nebbiolo wines, and why do you choose to do that? And do you find that some crus perform better in different size aging vessels as compared to others?
Well, I think it's important always to manage in terms of extraction or evolution the tannins, because the tannins are very important in the setup of the wine and the complexity of the wine. It's important to give a taste, but it's important to be round as is possible. I don't care about the quantity of the tannin, but it's important the quality of the tannin. This is the reason why we are always more focused in the harvest with very ripe tannin. And after the long maturation on the skin is very helpful, because if we do short maturation, we have more tannin, more aggressive tannin. If we do long maturation on the skin, we have the evolution during the maturation. And when we rack the wine, it is much more refined and more complex and more deep. And after is not necessary to have a small size of oak, because I think the oak, the main goal of the oak, the barrel, is to give the oxygen and to help the tannin to be more round and more silky. If we have a good beginning of the tannin, is it not necessary to have a small size to have more oxygen to involve the tannin. For this reason, I always like a minimum 700 liter, but more and more, because the global warming helped the maturation of the tannin, we have a large barrel like 2,000, 2,500, 3,000 liter, because they can have a great maturation of the oxygenation, but they keep also the freshness of the fruit and of the wine.
Yeah, and it shows in your wines. So you were already telling us a little bit about your sparkling winemaking when we were talking about the yeast strains, but can you tell us a bit more about your approach to making your Alta Longa wines?
This was one of my dreams, because I did a school of a winemaker, enologist school, and of course I was always fascinated from the different kind of winemaking. The reason why I like to try to make a white wine, still white, like Chardonnay, or also like Riesling. But the dream was also the sparkling, because the sparkling Champenois with the double fermentation is very intriguing, and also I like the wine. I drink a lot of champagne in my life, and I always like to try to make a sparkling myself, but I never take the hazard, because before wasn't an appellation, and I judge myself not enough a big winery to have a power to promote also sparkling. But when I feel the Alta Langa appellation become in the market in end of 1990, I decided to try also myself, because an appellation is an expression of terroir. I consider myself a man of terroir, and for me it's important to challenge also this. Obviously, I'm Barolo producer. I don't need to forget, and I'm happy when the people don't forget we are primary Barolo producer. But I have also other passion in my job, and for this reason, I decided to try also to make sparkling champenois, and because it was an appellation. And Alta Langa is this recent, the first vintage of Alta Langa is in 2002, and I had my first release in 2003, just 1,000 bottles, very, very small quantity, because the vineyard in Alta Langa grow very, very slowly. I don't have a lot of grape, but after I feel the character of the area, I increased the plantation, and now we own more than 5 hectares of Pinot Noir and Chardonnay to make Alta Langa. This is what I like, because Alta Langa have an expression very particular, and he have a lot of personality between the sparkling Champenois.
Yes, and how long typically do you keep the wines on the lees?
The Alta Langa rule are very, very strict. I think it's the mostly restrictive protocol, because minimum to call Alta Langa is 30 months from the tirage to the disgorgement is mandatory. And always another particular to make unique the appellation is the vintage, because it has to be always with vintage. Like all the Piedmontese wine, Barolo, Barbaresco, Barbera, everyone have the vintage in the label every year. Also, Alta Langa is mandatory this. And this is very interesting, because it's particular. It can justify also, of course, it's expensive to make Alta Langa, and the reason why people have to understand this is a potentially high level of wine.
But it's great, because it really allows for people year over year to understand the kind of vintage variations, while still kind of getting the through line of the terroir and the grapes themselves.
Absolutely. The goal of Alta Langa is not to have every year the same expression like many other sparkling in the world, but a more particular difference between every year.
That's great.
Italian Wine Podcast, brought to you by Mama Jumbo Shrimp.
So you also make Nebbiolo into some sparkling wine with what you green harvest. So how does making this grape in Metodo Classico differ from Alta Langa?
As the people say, I'm an experimental man. Of course, I like to try many kind of winemaking. And after 6 years to start to make Alta Langa, I decided to try to vinify the green harvest, because we do the green harvest of the Nebbiolo for Barolo quite late, in the beginning of September. And the character of the grape, almost good to have a good alcohol, 10.5%, and a lot of acidity. And I did in 2008 my first experiment, in 2009 the second one to check what's happening here. And after I start to share with some friends and with some customer, and of course they feel interesting wine, very different than Pinot, because we can have a relation between Pinot Noir and Nebbiolo. In the red wine, Pinot Noir is always more velvety, and Nebbiolo is a little bit more rustic. In the same side, when we do sparkling, Pinot Noir is more elegant, more refined. Nebbiolo has more personality in aromas, and a little bit of a touch of tannin. But this is a character. And the reason why in Nebbiolo sparkling we make we respect the primary fruit. We don't need to do too long stay on the lees, just 24 months. but no dosage, the same like the Alta Langa, to have more, to can feel the brightness of the petal rose and red fruit, typical from Nebbiolo, harvested very early.
So you mentioned that you do your green harvest pretty late in September, but is that typical for Barolo, or is that more your decision?
Oh, it depends. It depends. This is what I said before. The personality of the wine is from the personality of the wine grower, the winemaker. Some people can do the green harvesting mid-July. I prefer to go, but this is also because we are a small wineries and we can do that in a few days very late. We can take out the less mature grape and we keep a little bit more complete on the vine to help the maturation more. And we can also manage more with more character because we are closer to the harvest, and we can see or we can check the evolution of the weather or the potential of the vintage.
Yeah, so you have a kind of almost a better idea of the direction of the vintage at that point.
Is it different? Is everyone can do it different way, but we like that.
So I'm going to shift my questions a little bit now more to the sales side of your job. What would you say is the breakdown of sales for you between direct sales, domestic, and international?
We don't choose the market. We try to do our best, and we welcome everyone to taste and buy our wine. Actually, we have almost 50%, 45% Italian market. We sell almost 10% direct in the cellar for the private customer, with the visitor, with the people from the tourists and wine lovers, especially. The rest is almost 20% in US and the rest in North Europe and a little bit in Asia.
And so you say you don't really go out and search for people. Does that mean people are coming to you to open up markets, or you're just happy with the way the markets are going?
In term, I don't decide like I need to do more in Denmark or more in Sweden. We are here as we try to find, especially the good professional and consistent partner client to believe in our philosophy in our small winery.
So you mentioned that you sell about 10% of your wine directly out of the cellar, which is a pretty great number. So how have you seen enotourism and direct sales grow over the past 5 years?
Yeah, we saw a big increasement, obviously, after the declaration of UNESCO. Of course, it was a little bit breakdown from the COVID, of course, but after COVID, we had an explosion of visitor again, and more and more for the restaurants, for the wineries, for the tourists. Is nice to see a lot of people to run or to ride in a bicycle between the vineyard or on the top of the hill, to ring a door, to taste the wine, to go in the restaurant. It is really, really an increasement, very important. Even we consider 20 years ago, 25 years ago, we had 2.5 months of tourists, maybe 3 from travel exhibition in October, November, and a little bit a month between around Easter and spring. Now we have almost 7-8 months tourists, and this is very, very interesting.
Yeah, that's really great for the area. I didn't put this question down in advance to you, but I am so curious because you're a native of Piemonte and of Barolo specifically. I mean, can you talk a little bit about how you've seen it change from since you were a little boy to now?
Yeah, of course, it was a big change. We are, to be honest, I'm almost 60, and when I was child 50 years ago, the area was very different because we had almost all mixed farm. Nebbiolo was maybe 30% of the production of grape. The rest was Dolcetto and Barbera because it was more people to drink wine every day. And the Barolo was not popular like today. Fortunately, after the big revolution, after methanol scandal, many wine growers stopped to sell the grape and start to make wine himself. And we passed from 40 to 400 wineries. And this is very, very interesting for the market, for different expression, to relive the area, also to give more personality and more interesting to catch the attention of the people. And in the past was quite, we can say poor, but was not easy like now. Now with the wine help very, very much beside the tourism and the restaurant to increase the wellness of this area.
Yeah, and maybe even 30 years ago, it was still pretty poor, right? And now it's this beautiful UNESCO site that the world wants to visit.
It was not like today. It was unsure more. Also, the climate was a little colder, was not easy to have a perfect maturation every year. If you see the calendar of the vintage of Barolo, it was one exceptional and really good each 3-4 years. Now we have every year a good quality, good potential. This is very, very good. Also, the climate change, but also the professionality of the people. Everyone increased the knowledge. All the family have maybe son or daughter to do enology at school, or they have increased the character of the work, and they are more professional.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
They did was an hard work from everybody, but we had a good result.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so back to a little bit, well, sort of on the same line with a little more history of the area, but you are working with some other autochthonous grapes from Piemonte. So can you tell us what they are and about your trials with them?
Well, we work, of course, with Barbera. We stopped to work with Dolcetto. In Alta Langa, I start to grow Nascetta, the indigenous variety. Originally from Barolo area, also very intriguing for me, especially because I'm passionate about white wines. I like to challenge myself in winemaking in white beside the Barolo. And I think Nascetta is a character interesting, and also is Barolo area, and it's good to keep this story. We do now the experimentation. I hope in a couple of years it will be totally authorized. The Isairet is another indigenous variety originally from Alta Langa, very acid, very good to make sparkling, and this is the reason why I like very much. But I will try also to do still wine, and this is interesting.
Will the DOC of Alta Langa allow you to blend that, or does it have to be specific varieties?
Now we have to think about, we have to check the experiment to judge what is the result.
And are you one of the main people experimenting with it, or are there other people?
Actually, there's just me with a colleague, but he do only the growing of the grape variety, and I make the wine. And now also the University of Turin, they do the official experimentation of 30, 40 bottles here, just to finalize the authorization.
And one more time, can you repeat the name of that grape?
The grape is called in our region the Liseyret. It is the evolution of the Gouais. The Gouais Blanc is the father of many grape varieties from Europe. Right? Chardonnay, Riesling, Sauvignon. Yeah.
So speaking of Riesling, I also had the opportunity to taste your Riesling, which is fantastic. And you mentioned that this is one of your favorite grapes. So I want to know how you developed your passion for Riesling, and do you think it has a future in Piemonte or Alto Piemonte?
Well, I have to repeat my personality. Yeah, I'm fascinated. When I'm fascinated from something, I try to make, or I try to experiment. And when I start to travel in Europe, in Germany, in Austria, to show the first bottle of my Barolo, I tasted the Riesling, and it was fascinating. And I decided to try to make a few bottles. So the passion increased. When I find the area in Alta Langa where the character of the weather and the soil feel for me more interesting to make white wines and sparkling, I decided to try to do this. And I'm happy people recognize the varietal character, because it's my first goal. It was funny, because when I started to make Riesling, it was not really popular in Italy. After I discovered it was 3 producers from Langhe to start to grow Riesling almost 30 years ago. Now, of course, it's a little bit more trendy because some producers start to grow, but I think it's important with Riesling to grow in fresh environment. And for this reason, it is important to have altitude.
Absolutely. And have you been opening any of your old bottles of Riesling, I should say, because I love aged Riesling. So I'm curious to know where it's heading, what direction it goes.
I opened just yesterday night with some friend in Ancona, our Riesling 2016, but we opened also a few months ago, 2009. And of course, I have to say, if the cork do a good job, because sometimes people can make a good wine, but after the cork have too much oxygen in the wine. But anyway, I feel the potential of a very good aging of Riesling from our area.
Well, I can't wait to see its progression. We actually have a question from somebody who's in our audience, a member of our IWA community, John, and he wants to know, have you seen the international markets embracing varieties like Nascetta, or is it mostly for local production, local consumption?
I think we have a very, very good advantage, because Nascetta is born from Barolo area. For this reason, many producers of Nascetta, they make also Barolo. Many of our importers know or buy the Barolo, but they try also Nascetta. For this reason, I feel also we have a group, like it's not a consortium, but it's a group of producers of Nascetta. We do some event, we work with some international wine journalists. I have to be honest, I'm very happy to see, considering it's less than 500,000 bottles of production on Nascetta in total. Many people, especially in US or also in North Europe, they know Nascetta. Of course, in Italy is a little bit more developed the market, but I'm surprisingly, I have to say, many foreign people know Nascetta.
So you're saying there's already kind of some brand recognition among the producers, so people are willing to try even a variety maybe they haven't heard of yet.
Yeah, because they have more opportunity, of course.
Yeah. And we have another question from another IWA community member. His name is Luis, and he wants to know, well, he comments that they actually do very well with Nascetta in the state of Florida, where he resides. So do you have distribution in Florida?
We have distribution in Florida, yes. We have an importer based close to Miami. He import some Nascetta, import Alta Langa, import Langa Nebbiolo, some Barolo, and Riesling.
This is very great news if you live in Florida. Okay, back to Barolo more specifically. How do you see the future of winemaking in Barolo, and what challenges and also what opportunities do you foresee for small producers like yourself?
I think a winery like us is the majority in the area, is the most representative in terms of number of labels to do the direct management of the vineyards and winemaking. And I think what we have to do, or what we can do, is continue to respect, to do everything to protect and respect the vineyard, to continue to have a strong and deep personality in our wine, because it's the unique way to characterize what we do.
And I think it was really interesting when I was with you last week that you said, a lot of people talk about how is the next generation going to change Barolo, and you said, we don't have to change it just for the sake of change. You guys have figured out how to do some things really well, and then there's also the opportunity to be curious and experimental like you have.
Absolutely. I think it's important to be curious, to be contemporary. Is not necessary to do big changing. It's important to be adaptable to the situation, to growing up. It's important to never follow the trend style, but to continue to keep the character of what we do, because we have a classic.
Yes, a singular place for making wine.
Exactly.
We actually have a follow-up question from Luis about your Riesling. So back to your Riesling. He wants to know, how does it compare aromatically to German Riesling?
It is possible to recognize well the character, the varietal character. The Riesling from Piedmont is always a little bit more powerful because we have more full body, because we have limestone soil. The German, they have more stone, and the wine is more lean. We have a little bit more full body. The reason why is not necessary for us to have a lot of residual sugar. We do just 3-5 grams residual sugar. And aromatically, it looks sometimes more like Austrian, and a little bit from Pfalz or from Mediterranean.
Interesting. And you also mentioned that the reason why you keep residual sugar is more for the preference of your consumers, right?
No, it's not for the consumer preference. It's for the varietal character expression, because Riesling is very important to keep just a few, 2-3 grams residual sugar. The expression of the variety, the aromas of Riesling is much more explosive. If it is completely dry, the aromas is a little bit more compressed and incomplete.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Oh, pleasure.
So I think this is a very, very important question because we are all Italian or fans of Italy. What is your favorite Piemontese food and wine pairing?
This is an interesting question because I repeat what I said you last day. I always don't like too much the classic suggestion from the old school of Barolo pairing, because with boar, wild rabbit, or something else is absolutely too much marinating, too much aromatized, too much spicy meat, too much cooking, and too much wine. And he lose a little bit, he cover a little bit the aromas of. I like when it's just medium rare red meat, just on the grill with maybe just with kind of salt in the top, because or one of the most interesting, and I learned this from some wine dinner when I travel in some restaurant in the US, and they pair the pasta, the tajarin, the egg pasta, with white on red ragu, because the starch of pasta and the texture of the egg pasta is very interesting, but also the delicate sauce is very respective of the primary fruit and the character of the Nebbiolo.
So we should do away with Nebbiolo and red meat all the time and try something a little more exciting.
We can start with the pasta and finish with the red meat.
Yeah, exactly. Those were all the questions that I had for you, and we got some great questions from the audience. I'm not sure if you have anything else you want to talk about.
I think I talk too much. I don't have any.
No, not at all. I do have one more question, because you're so curious and you're so experimental. So I want to know if you have any new experiments in the works that we didn't talk about, or maybe even any varieties that you want to experiment with in the future.
I have to be careful because my children, unfortunately, they like to start to involve in business with us, with me and my wife. They said some years ago, Dad, don't do everything. Keep us to do something in the future. And I think it's important to respect together the idea, to take some idea. My son, he would like to try again to make dolcetto. We stopped 5 years ago. Now I don't know if we do that soon or not. My daughter likes to increase the nascetta expression, even we do in amphora for 10 months. But the last wine I will put in the market, it will be in Rosé de Sagné. Now is in production, but we never disgorge it. Now is 5 harvest we do that. And I hope I will release in the end of the year or the next spring, or the 2025. But I think we have a lot to do. I would like to come back in the image also to Barolo producer and not only experimental man with many sparkling and many white. Even I believe in everything what I do.
Absolutely. And it's really commendable to be able to do all of these different wines so well in a way that is so expressive. So it's one of the reasons why I fell in love with your wines. So complimenti.
Thank you very much. Grazie.
Oh, absolutely. And I did want to mention one more thing really briefly, that you are so fortunate that both of your children are very much want to be involved and to carry this on forward with you, for you.
Yeah, it is, I think, the hardest experiment in my life to start to work with my children, because it's important to share the idea, to have more. I start with myself and after with my wife, and I do almost what I think without control. Now we are 4 people to share the idea, and this is I like very much, because it's one of the best satisfaction of the parents to have the children to follow the job. But it's also hard to work together. But is the mostly challenging situation, and I like to do that. And
your daughter is working harvest in Australia right now, correct?
Yeah, she's in Australia for 3 months. We'll come back in end April.
Well, good for her. Australia is a wonderful place too.
Yeah, it's funny. Day by day, now she's tired but happy to have this experience.
Is this her first harvest, or has she done harvest with you? I'm sure.
Yeah, she did her first harvest after graduate in 2022. Last year, she did harvest in Burgundy in 2023, and now here. And after she said, no, after I will stay home to work. Okay. And the son, he is very, very happy to work in the vineyard. And after he travel around, it will be 2 weeks in Nebraska and in Iowa to promote wines.
Yeah, that's the beauty of making wine. You can sit in a tractor in the hills of Barolo one day, and the next day you can be across the planet selling wine.
Yeah. It's what I did all together in myself some years ago. But
well, again, I want to thank you so much for your time and your knowledge and your expertise. It's been such a treat to talk to you and to learn more about the area through you, and again, just to celebrate how fantastic your wines are.
It's me. I'm thankful to you to give me this opportunity. Apologize for all the people who heard this interview for try to understand my Piedmontese English and my expression very particular. But I hope if they can travel in Langhe to visit us, that you can taste the wine directly in our tasting room or to see the vineyards and everything.
Absolutely. Where can they find you? Can they book online? Should they email you?
They can go on the website, and after they can email us is a form to book the tasting, or they can send an email. We can give all the information about what we can do.
That's wonderful. Well, I hope lots of people go out to find you. I was just there actually last week, and I can vouch that it's one of the most beautiful places I've ever been.
They'll be very, very well.
Ciao.
Ciao. Grazie.
Listen to the Italian Wine Podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We're on SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Himalaya FM, and more. Don't forget to subscribe and rate the show. If you enjoy listening, please consider donating through ItalianWinePodcast.com. Any amount helps cover equipment, production, and publication costs. Until next time, cin cin.